So today we're going to be talking about how skilling has changed in Old School since the release of Old School until now. So it's been out for just a little over 5.5 years at this point. That's crazy to think about. It doesn't feel like it's been 5.5 years, but it has. And in that time we've had a lot of updates that have changed the metas for skills. We're going to be focusing mostly on the XP rates at the beginning of the game and the XP rates now, talking a little bit about why the XP rates changed, what updates caused the XP rates to change, and that sort of stuff. And the XP rates I'm going to be giving are based on EHP, which comes from Crystal Math Labs, and it stands for Efficient Hours Played. Efficient Hours Played is pretty much the consensus XP rates that high levels had for pretty much the best XP rates that you could get over long periods of time if you were knowledgeable, knew what you were doing, and putting in maximal effort. Most people who try to get EHP don't get EHP, so it's definitely not just if you train this way, you're going to get this much XP. So first we're going to start off with some of the big changes that changed a lot of the game, not just one specific skill. So some of those things are pathing. Back in the day when you were running, sometimes your character would actually run backwards for a tick or two. Next up is randoms, random events. Before, you used to get random events pretty often and you had to do them. You couldn't skip them. So being able to skip them was a pretty big change and increased the XP per hour for pretty much every skill. Next is the Grand Exchange that allowed you to trade really quickly. In the beginning, many of us high-level players, we used alts to do the trading for us. So we actually still spent 0 time trading before the GE, but there were still a lot of people who didn't have an alt to do the trading. So for a lot of people, the GE helped speed up a lot of skills. And the next, respawn timers. Back in the day, the respawn timer for things was based on how many people were in a world. The more full it was, the faster they would respawn. So if you wanted the best XP, you had to be on the most crowded world, and there was only space for a certain amount of people. So usually you couldn't get a spot in the most crowded world. So you would have to just do with slower respawn times. They changed that so that every world, no matter how many people are in it, have the max respawn times. Another pretty big change was the change to world hopping. Back in the day, you actually had to wait like 30 seconds between every single world hop. I can't remember if they changed that before Old School or if it was during Old School. I think it was during Old School, which is why I'm mentioning it, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But they changed that so you can instantly hop. So now we can get into the individual skills, and I'm going to start off with the skills that were changed the least. And as the video goes on, I will go to skills that were changed more. So starting with Thieving, the time to 99 hasn't really changed at all. There hasn't been any drastic changes for Thieving. At the beginning of the game, the best way to get to 99 Thieving was blackjacking and then pyramid plunder. And that still is the best way to get to 99. There has been small things like the Serpentine Helm. You can wear that so you don't get poisoned anymore at Pyramid Plunder. There has been stamina potions, the HP Cape perk, and really small things like that that really don't change the XP per hour. It just more makes it a little bit easier to do. So at the start of the game, it was about 61 hours to get to 99 Thieving, and currently it still stands at 61 hours to get to 99 Thieving. Next up is Agility, and this one has actually changed a lot in how you train it, but the actual XP per hour hasn't changed too much. So at the very beginning of Old School, so the early levels, you could start with the Gnome course and later on move over to the Barbarian Assault Area course. There's also a method you could use using little toy mice that was later patched, I think like a year after Old School came out. And then you'd move on to the Wilderness course and the Apeltal course and Dorgish Khan. On December 5th, 2013, they introduced rooftop courses. When making these, the community was still pretty heavily against XP increases, so the courses were based off of the current best method to train agility, so the XP increase wasn't too big with the courses, but it did introduce Marks of Grace and the Graceful set, and there was a course for pretty much every 10 levels, so because of the Marks of Grace, it kind of made all the other courses dead, even though they were the same XP. The addition of Marks of Grace made the rooftop courses better. Not only that, but the rooftop courses actually gave you energy upon completing each section. So that's why when you're doing rooftop courses, you usually don't need energy potions for most of them. While if you're doing agility, On most other courses outside of rooftop courses, you actually do need super energies or some sort of energy potion to continue running through the course. Next up is firemaking. So as far as efficient firemaking, it hasn't changed a whole lot. We did receive the Infernal Axe, which gives you passive firemaking XP while training woodcutting. So if you get 99 woodcutting with the Infernal Axe, I think you get something like 1,000,000 free firemaking XP. And then redwood logs for 90 plus firemaking, which increase the XP per hour for 90 plus by a fair bit. And the time for 99 at the start of Old School was 31 hours about, and now it is about 24 hours. The biggest firemaking update was the Winter Tod, but that's not efficient to do for regular accounts. So efficiency wise, it didn't change too much. Next up is Hunter, and so the major changes for Hunter are black chins. At the beginning of Old School, the best chinchompas you could hunt were red chinchompas. I think red salamanders were also a very good option. You didn't get any money, but I think they may have been better XP than red chinchompas, or possibly close. Another big update to Hunter that changed it was the private hunter area if you do want to do red chins. That makes it so you don't really have to compete with any bots or even other players for the most part. And then the discovery of 3-tick skilling also changed Hunter quite a bit. In the beginning of Old School, 3-tick Hunter existed, but no one knew about it. So no one did it and it wasn't a thing. Also recently, they released birdhouses. So at the beginning of Old School, it took about 130 hours for 99 Hunter. And currently it is sitting at 108 hours for 99. Next up is Herblore. This one hasn't changed too much as well. We've had a few new potions, but they haven't really been better XP. Creating anti-venoms can be better if you are a very fast clicker, but that relies on how fast you can click, and also I think it's pretty expensive, so that's not what is considered the efficient way to do it right now. One of the updates that did change it though is the ability to have an NPC make you unfinished potions. This took away the time that you needed to trade a maker back in the day at the start of Old School. What you would do is you'd actually have to have a person sit there and make you your unfinisheds, and then you'd pay that person some sort of pay for the potions that they're doing. And then recently we saw the update with the withdraw X option from the bank. So you can just left click withdraw like 14 or whatever, which speeds up Herblore a little bit. So none of these changes were game breaking. So the time for 99 on Herblore hasn't changed too much. At the beginning of Old School, it was 46 hours for 99, and currently it is 37 hours for 99. So just a small change there. And now we're going to start getting into skills that have been made quite a bit easier. It's pretty crazy how much easier some of these skills have gotten. So first off, we're starting off with farming. At the beginning of Old School, it was calced at 22 hours for 99, and currently it is 11 hours for 99. So some of the big updates that changed that time for farming. At the beginning of Old School, you actually had to cut down your trees yourself, and then use a spade on the stump to remove the tree so that you can plant a new one. Now you can just pay the guy standing next to the patch and he'll remove a tree for you. Currently you can do that for both regular trees and fruit trees. At the beginning of the game you could only do that for fruit trees, so this cut down on the time you have to spend on tree runs by quite a bit. Also, there was an update to saplings. Before you had to make your own saplings. Now saplings are tradable, so you can just buy them already ready to go. Also, we had the update of Fossil Island, which introduces 3 new patches for teak seeds and mahogany seeds, and those give quite a bit of XP. We've also seen resources go down in price from buffed drop tables. So with Zora and the release of other bosses and buffed drop tables, things like coconuts became cheap and usable. At the beginning of Old School, you actually did not protect your magic trees or your palm trees because it costed too much, and it was more efficient to just use super compost and have some die every now and again to save the extra money. There also has been new teleports that get you closer to patches, such as the Slayer Ring will take you right next to the tree patch in the Gnome Village. The Slayer Ring was not a thing at the beginning of Old School. There's also redirection tablets that take you pretty close to a few different patches. So while farming wasn't a very long skill, it actually pretty much got halved in the time it takes for 99. Next up we have crafting. That went from 50 hours to 37 hours for 99. At the beginning of the game, the way to train it up was green d'hide bodies and battle staffs. And currently the efficient way to do it is black d'hide bodies. So the updates that made this easier are updates like raids and PVM bosses that make it a lot easier to gain wealth. Drop table buffs that give you more black d'hide. Black d'hide was a very scarce resource at the beginning of the game. The only way to get black d'hide was off of KBD and black dragons, which people rarely killed. And skilling resources were much more costly compared to how much money you could make per hour compared to how it is now. So if you wanted to be efficient in the beginning of Old School, you had to pick methods that were a bit more cheap than what you could do today. Also, the Withdraw X option has sped up a few of the different crafting methods by a tiny bit. Next we have construction, and that went from 35 hours down to 16 hours. So similar to crafting, this one has been devalued by just the advancement of bosses and how much money you can make and the amount of money in the game, because the actual GP cost for construction hasn't changed too much. It's tied to how much it costs to turn logs into planks, and there's just way more GP in the game now. 1 mil GP now is worth a whole lot less than 1 mil GP at the beginning of Old School. This means you can use more expensive but faster training methods. At the beginning of Old School, it was efficient to use oak planks. Now it's considered efficient to use mahogany planks. So that right there is the biggest change to construction. But along with that, there has been quite a bit of quality of life updates for construction. In the beginning of Old School, your butler would actually sometimes spawn quite a ways away from you after you sent him to get planks from the bank. You'd have to sit there and run around walls and into other rooms and stuff to get him to talk to him in order to get your planks. And you couldn't just use noted planks on the butler. You had to sit there and go through the dialogue options and then type in 20 to have him go and get 20 planks. So every single interaction with the butler was a lot longer than it is currently, but it was just really annoying to do. Construction is so much nicer and easier to do now. We have woodcutting. So there actually hasn't really been too big of updates that have changed woodcutting, but it still has gotten so much easier than it used to be. So originally at the start of Old School, it was calced at 158 hours for 99, and currently it is calced at 90 hours for 99. And the reason for that massive change in hours to 99 is mainly due to the discovery of 2-tick and 1.5-tick teak woodcutting. It existed at the beginning of Old School, but people didn't know about it, no one did it. And when it was discovered, it was a really big thing because it pretty much just about doubled the XP per hour that you can achieve while doing woodcutting. And people can't complain too much about something like that because it's always been in the game, people just didn't know about it. It wasn't like Jagex made some new update that was super overpowered and intentionally doubled the XP per hour. At the beginning of Old School, you pretty much just AFK'd teaks. There was a tinderbox method that you would do where basically as you get a teak log, you use a tinderbox on it and it would drop it, and then you click on the teak and continue woodcutting. Then people discovered that you could do herb and tar on teak trees, and that sped it up a little bit. And then a further discovery was the birds on the Monkey Madness, where the birds on Apotal, you could get 2 birds attacking you at once, and with auto retaliate on, I'm not sure exactly how the mechanics work, but you would auto retaliate, click on the tree, and it would allow you to chop it pretty much instantly, and that was called 2-tick teaks, and that pretty much doubled the XP per hour. And then the shift click drop update helped quite a bit with woodcutting, mainly if you were doing the 2-tick methods and stuff like that. So I'm already almost at 14 minutes and still have a lot of skills left to go. So I'm going to go ahead and split this video up into 2 videos. So the second part should be out pretty soon. That will contain the skills that have been impacted the most by updates and made faster. So thank you for watching and see you in the next video.